This is the Slots and Sockets podcast, episode number 21 for, I forget what date it is today. Oh, October 28th. There we go. I am one of your date challenged hosts, IRD Moose, and my partner in crime is...
Go Steelers, Turbo Penguin.
Yeah, he's got the terrible towel out today because I guess there's a game or something. Some people think the NFL's still a thing, but, we got some tech news to cover instead. And to kind of kick it off, with all of the bad news from Intel with Arrow Lake. Sorry, I do that a lot because I guess it's worse than Alder Lake at this point. Little bit of good news there is that Intel has gotten rid of the thermal interface material that they were using from Ivy Bridge all the way until Raptor Lake. The garbage that they were putting in there that was unserviceable and had a habit of drying out and just not really particularly performing well. Looks like Der Bauer discovered that they went back to indium and they're actually getting good thermal transfer. So we'll chalk that up as a little bit of good news on the worst platform Intel's released in a long time.
Well, it's really interesting we say that because in the test results, in a lot of the reviews, people had really positive thing about thermals. Mm-hmm. And I think some people thought it was, using less power, which is true. It is using less power.
Yep.
But I do believe it's probably a mixture of that plus using better thermal conductivity materials.
Right. Putting that stuff in an area where the average person can't get to it. So, you're going to see better performance out of your cooler because more of that heat can make it through into the IHS and then into your cooler. So, a little bit of good news there. And on the AMD front, we've got some big news that just recently dropped that we've got AGESA 1.2.0.2a coming down the pike. That's
your
some
most
new
favorite
features.
mode.
Yeah.
That's the most favorite asked mode. They want turbo mode. Everyone wants a little turbo in their lives.
Yeah. Hey, look, I'm lucky enough to have you, but now I can have you.
Need turbo. No turbo for you.
Turbo.
You already have enough. You already have enough turbo.
Well, no, I can always use more turbo, and that's the thing.
I'm enough turbo for you.
Well,
until that's your wife. I have enough turbo.
I don't have one of those yet.
Sure.
I'm still working on that one. But turbo mode is making a comeback for AMD, and we've been jokingly referencing it for the last couple of weeks, but it looks like that's coming true for the 3D parts, and it might actually come to all 9000 series CPUs.
It'll be interesting to see what that is. Doing some testing to see what that is, if that's an Infinity fabric speed boost, what that is, because there is clearly something, and I don't think it's overclocking per se. And some of the talking was about memory bandwidth. So it might go well that it's a CCD or a memory fabric bandwidth boost, but I really will be interested to see, what this looks like for, 9000, but how it affects 9000 X3D, because I think there's going to be a difference between both of those. And it will be very interesting to see what the difference between those two modes, if that's really where this is coming to, or if it's just another optimization that's quote unquote coming out near an X3D part.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing too, is there isn't a whole lot of information out about it. It's basically just kind of what's been leaked through some of the stuff about the Gigabyte board. And some of it seems to indicate they might be disabling CCDs, so we might have core parking coming back. One of my big questions is, depending on some of the stuff they're doing, is this something where we're going to have to reboot to go in and out of game of turbo mode?
It
Which,
just depends on what it is. I mean,
yeah,
if it's a memory fabric speed boost, probably not.
yeah.
Um,
If they're
it
disabling a
just
CCD, they don't have to either, because that's all handled through the driver now. So
that's a BIOS loaded question, and I would say that some of these are probably very well could be, and some of these, a number of them would be on the fly. I don't look, if you're going to run this, you're going to want to run this. I'm going to assume most of the time. I don't see there's going to be a need to toggle this on and off. So
yeah.
I would think this is probably just a setting you're going to use in the BIOS, and that's it.
And turn on the game bar and use the driver in the OS. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And one of the other things too that could be going on here is they might start making a play for Intel's optimization that they've been doing for their CPUs in games, where, potentially, because AMD's been doing that on the graphics side for a very long time. You could apply pre-configured settings games and things like that. Why not do it on the CPU side where, oh, hey, look, we see you loaded up Rise of the Tomb Raiders. So we're going to kick on turbo mode and we're going to boost all the cores to this speed so you get the best frame rate and the best throughput that you can for this game. And oh, look, over here we're playing Ashes of the Singularity and you can turn on all the cores and get all the goodness. And, just kind of evening out that performance across the board where, like with the 5000 series and before, you might see some performance degradation because you've got a lot more cores than the game can use.
It'll be interesting to see kind of what this is and how this is designed to necessarily work, because I very well could see, I don't know. Here's the thing. If we saw, a bigger push in performance optimization in turbo mode for X3D, could next gen 10,000 series or whatever they call it next, I don't think it'll be called 10,000, by the way. Could that be X3D as the only model?
I mean, it's possible. I don't see why you wouldn't do that, because the only place I could see where they wouldn't necessarily want X3D is maybe server chips,
But
which
again,
already have the
these,
cache on there.
Yeah, I mean that's it. Like you don't want it, but in all honesty, like I asked the question, like, okay, so how many consumers don't want X3D?
Right. Well, I
And
mean,
I'm
and
gonna
yeah,
think if you, I mean, think of the beauty about this. Think if you had a 9400, like a 4-core, 8-thread,
mhm,
with Vcache
yeah,
on a laptop.
that'd be pretty slick.
You think about some of the options you have for 3D. You talk about that. To be honest, I'm kind of surprised that Intel hasn't made a 3D Vcache offering, or at least something along those lines, because
Right.
it's so positive.
Yeah.
And it helps a ton. Now, maybe that's just something that they just haven't put the time and R&D into, but I can't think it would be wildly impossible. But I could very well easily see where you have a stock like a 9400 4-core with 90 megabytes of 3D cache, right?
Yeah.
And you scale up the size of the Vcache that you would absolutely use. If you gave me 256 on a 9900X 3D, you would absolutely use it.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And so
For sure.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see kind of what that turbo boost mode does. That might be an indication. I don't know, but I would say if I had to choose, um, I'm going to guess it's probably like memory fabric clock increases.
It's also disabling SMT by the looks of it, so we're losing that hyperthreading tech version, AMD's version of hyperthreading, which, depending on the game, might actually significantly improve performance. Because in a lot of cases, if you disable SMT, you can bump the clocks on the full cores up by several points and get a bit, almost claw back the majority of that performance. So, for games that don't support SMT, or at least as many threads as AMD can throw at a game, that could be a big source of performance improvement and latency improvement as well, especially if you talk about having core parking in play, and then you're looking at potential memory fabric changes when you kick on turbo mode and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I mean,
there's a lot of different ways you could do it, and it looks like they're kind of hitting all of them.
I think that probably is it. I also think, anytime they can give a performance boost here to anything across the board,
Mm-hmm.
it would be smart for AMD to continue to do that. The other nice thing that we're seeing is, again, more leaks, but more concrete leaks, especially as we're starting to see more e-tailers and volume distributors list, and we're starting to see some more full specs. So 9800X3D looks like we've seen another one that's looking like a 4.7 base with a 5.2 over turbo. The thing but the other thing is that it does have free multiplier. It says yes. Now this will be really interesting because if you can unlock your multiplier, that will allow you to get some more overclocking speed out of this. And we don't need a ton, but if you can get 10 to 15% on these chips,
Mm-hmm.
some of these other quote unquote leaks that we have seen could be very interesting.
Yeah. Well, and in addition to it, it looks like some of the leaks from Blender have produced some interesting results. Tech Power Up, or I'm sorry, Tom's Hardware had an article talking about some Blender leaks, and they found some results that show the 9800X3D getting about 26% faster than the 7800X3D. Now, we don't have any specs on what that part was running at, if it was overclocked, or maybe it was running the new turbo boost functionality. But, seeing those kinds of numbers out of a next gen 3D part is pretty encouraging. Again, it's all early leak data, so take it with a grain of salt. But as we get closer to the embargo lifting on November 6th, I think we're going to start seeing an escalation as people go through their testing and start cranking out more and more data and accidentally forgetting to not submit the results. And so, I think what we could look at here is the 9800X3D genuinely being an absolute beast in the gaming market. And I expect it's going to hit that sweet spot. We might see a 9900X3D and a 9950X3D, but, are you going to want to spend the extra money for those parts when the 9800X3D kind of hits that sweet spot of the high end of the middle? Now, somebody like me, yeah, I'm going to do, if those parts do exist, I'm going to do that just because I'm crazy, but
I think AMD's kind of learned, and I think we're going to see fewer of those parts. But at the same time, I think the problem is that they were expecting 9000 series to sell harder, which it hasn't done. and 9800X3D is coming in, with a quicker turnaround time than they were expected. So it's
Yeah.
really kind of changed their sales marketing strategy here. They're going to have extra parts, and I think the only thing that they can really do is just key out the 9000 series, the non-X3D parts.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be the smart thing for them to do. It's nice that they've given a lot of these parts some more life with some TDP pumps. So that's a positive thing. But I still, at the end of the day, think that this is mostly a good thing. I mean, 9,000 maybe have been a little bit too hot. I mean, a little bit too expensive. It's good for gamers to have some choice. The gamers that really want it should go X3D. And then I also think that, if you're not happy with, and we don't have pricing details on 9800 X3D yet, but I think that people will probably find some good deals on 9800 X3D when 99 and 9950 X3D come out. I think we'll probably see 9800 slot back into the same price point. Although I will say 7800 X3D is all but gone in online e-tailers. Now, I do sort of question if it's because AMD has pulled that stock back or told the e-tailers to pull it back. I could very well easily see that. Well, just at the time will tell. If that is the case, if they pulled back that supply, then keep an eye out for some killer Black Friday deals, because Black Friday deals would be a 7800 X3D for, 380, 379, somewhere in that ballpark would be a great buy, possibly even lower. I mean, if you can get a 7800 X3D in the threes, that is a great chip. Now, I do think that the 9800 X3D is going to be faster. No doubt on question about that. But you just got to look at the price for performance, and I think that's a great processor. And if you could get that at a good price, that would be the buy from a value perspective. But from a performance perspective, something that's going to last you longer. The question is how long will these CPUs and GPUs run you?
Yeah.
If I had a 5090 and a 9800 X3D, that is going to give you some really good longevity on the life of these gaming CPUs. So could you see that running 5, 6 years, 7, 8? Very possible.
Yeah.
Very possible.
Very much so. And, I mean, to kind of touch on the pricing side, it looks like some retailers have leaked prices for the 9800 X3D. And they look like they're sitting somewhere between 480 and 525. So, if it lands in there, great. If it's maybe 550 when it launches, I still think that would be a phenomenal price for it. I think if you start pushing towards 600, that might be kind of the edge of it from what I would see based on, the parts that I've already released and those prices. So, I don't know. I mean, this is kind of like the golden age of building a gaming PC right now if you like AMD, because man, I mean, their marketing sucked, but the silicon has knocked it out of the park when you actually look at what it really does. And so, I'm really kind of looking forward to the 9800 X3D and what it's actually going to produce as far as performance results and benchmarks, because we should start seeing information coming out the night before the official release, which I think is at 9 a.m. Central on the 7th. And it should be 9 a.m. Central on the 7th for the actual launch, and then 9 a.m. on the 6th for the review embargo to drop. So unlike Intel, they're dropping the review embargo a day early.
That doesn't surprise me. I mean, you've got enough that they want to get in and kind of crash Intel's party.
Yep.
I think we'll start seeing more stuff trickle out leaked wise. As far as pricing goes, we got to keep in mind 7800X3D launched with a retail launch of $449. So I do think, $499 probably is the highest I would expect it. But I very well keep in mind, these are not people selling physical CPUs and in hand yet. So this pricing, don't look at this point. I think what we got to keep in mind is you've got to really look at what this is and take everything that you get a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks from any manufacturer with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Intel said that theirs was going to, be amazing, and then as we got closer and closer, walked back those results.
Hey, it's got amazing cooling. That's really about it.
It's efficient when it comes to cooler.
Right. Finally, Intel gets efficiency somewhere. So, yeah. And, on that bombshell, I think we're going to call it a show for the evening. You go back and enjoy your football game, and thank you, everyone, for watching and subscribing and commenting and doing all the stuff down in the doobly-doo. And until next time, have fun storming the castle.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.